You can definitely zap the brain to enhance your consciousness.
This is one of the world's leading sleep scientists and founder of SleepSpace, Dr. Dan Gartenberg. Dan's viral TED Talk, The Brain Benefits of Deep Sleep, has garnered over 5 million views. We spoke with Dan to get his expert advice on how to achieve better sleep. He also shared insights into his groundbreaking research, which includes his patent on Inception-like dream capture technology.
Pleasure to be here.
Dr. Dan, welcome to the show. So I think that there are a lot of people that would love to become a sleep scientist. Maybe not for their job like you have, but they kind of want to wake up a bit later, especially on the weekends. Tell us though, how does one become a sleep scientist?
It's a funny question actually, because there's actually no formal training in sleep science.
Okay.
So, an MD almost gets an hour of training in sleep medicine. The people who actually treat sleep medicine is kind of a hodgepodge of different doctors, psychologists. Okay. I studied fatigue and alertness in graduate school.
Okay.
Sort of like the closest thing you can come to a sleep scientist, and, went on to run large randomized controlled trials on insomnia. So I'm a trained cognitive psychologist.
Understood.
But the exact training in sleep science is sort of something that people, if they're in the field, just end up calling themselves that. And there's a couple of us out there.
So when did you know, though, that you wanted to be a sleep scientist?
When I couldn't fall asleep in college. It was a big part of it, honestly. I suffered from something called delayed sleep phase syndrome.
Okay.
In high school. It's very common, actually, if you go to bed late on the weekends and have to wake up super early on the weekdays. I remember waking up at 5:30 in the morning and waiting at the bus stop when it was still pitch dark outside and stuff like this. But there's actually another famous TED Talk about changing the school start times to better align with people's circadian rhythm by Wendy Trexel. So I basically, when you go to bed really late on the weekends, like I did as a partying 17-year-old, and then you have to wake up really early, it sort of dysregulates your whole circadian rhythm, and you really struggle to fall asleep on Monday night. So I always had sort of sleep problems even since I was a baby, and some people are sort of maybe born a little anxious or tense, and I've figured out how to overcome them. And then in undergrad, I ended up taking a graduate level neuroscience of sleep course by a famous sleep professor, Giuliano Tononi, who inspired me by the idea of what if you can enhance, 1/3 of your life.
Wow.
And that's what's driven me for 15 years now. Is there something that we can do while we're sleeping to make it even just 1% more effective?
Right.
Because if we could do that, it would have massive benefit to society, chronic health, even our sense of humor and ability to get along is impacted by how much sleep we got the night before.
So you mentioned the concept of benefiting 1/3 of your life, but Dr. Dan, I would actually argue that it's really about the benefit of the 2/3 of your life, because how you sleep relates to how you function throughout the day. And so there are definitely so many learnings that you had. How does this relate to starting a company, though?
Well, starting a company is a really complex cognitive decision. If you start out in the wrong place because you haven't, if you're sleep deprived, you're not going to make good, complex decisions. And I think it's sort of my superpower is to think of these big ideas, and I see sleep as the crucial ingredient to being able to really conceptualize, integrate concepts. And that's really what deep sleep does, is it helps us make sense of everything that happens during the day. So we can get deep into the sleep science here. The theory that I have is something called the synaptic homeostasis hypothesis, which is not my theory.
Tell us it.
It's Giuliano Tononi's theory, which is basically one of the main reasons why we sleep, why humans sleep. There's basically 5 main reasons why we sleep, which we can also get into.
Okay.
But one of them is memory consolidation. So basically during the day, our neurons, their activation overall increases. So we have a higher overall neural activation from the events of the day. And what happens in sleep is in deep sleep, we down-regulate all of those connections because you don't need to remember everything, right? And then in REM sleep, you replay the relevant things to your survival. And that's how we form memories. And, if you have a traumatic event or something, that information gets overly ingrained and you can't, get past it cognitively.
It sounds like the writers of Inception knew what they were doing by making a thriller based on this concept.
I'm very into Inception, and I have some tech that can potentially do it one day.
Oh my goodness.
That's a big idea.
All right.
Just don't do the combine Inception with marketing. That's when you start
that's a mess.
getting McDonald's ads while you're dreaming.
No. That and virtual reality. Yeah, that's not a future I want to live in.
That's a bad combo.
Yep.
I patented it though, so no one else can do it.
I've known Dr. Dan for a few years. Audience, we are all in safe hands. Trust me, we're good here. So I guess then, the concept for SleepSpace specifically though, okay, so we know kind of your background, how we got there, but what does SleepSpace do? I know that there's a lot of components to it, but let's just break it down a bit.
Yeah, so we want to do something during sleep to enhance sleep. So most wearables, most sleep trackers, they actually analyze the sleep after it's occurred.
Okay.
So your Fitbit will actually take the full night of data and then estimate which stage of sleep you're in. These devices have been out for so long, and they come and go because there's not much customer loyalty to something that just sort of feeds you information and doesn't give you any actionable insights to improve it. We developed the first algorithm that in real time measures which stage of sleep you're in and then adjusts sound, light, and temperature in order to enhance your sleep during sleep. We've implemented it on sound and light. I have a new product that I'm rolling out that's going to do temperature. So right now, basically, if you wear an Apple Watch or even the sensors of your phone, we integrate with various wearables. I'm wearing a BioStrap here, which we integrate with. Or the sensors of your phone will measure which stage sleep you're in and then adjust sounds and play a delta wave frequency, which is some evidence has shown, and we ran a study to prove this, that it can increase and train more regenerative delta brainwaves. And that's what I've been tackling for a long time, but it's easier said than done because actually when you can imagine if you adjust sound in the wrong way, you can wake someone up.
Right.
So that's sort of what makes it hard.
So you're speaking about the concept of research and development, and you've also spoken about the concept of product development. I would like to hear what comes first for you, the development of the physical product or the research that backs it up? I know that naturally you probably say the research comes first, right? But I feel like in the day-to-day, you must receive so much data from your hardware that then you can research after it and then use to perhaps create another product after. So what comes first there?
Yeah, so it's definitely an iterative process. So, I have this weird trick where I get non-dilutive capital from the National Science Foundation, National Institute of Health. Yes. So it's basically a lot of people don't know this, but the biggest VC in the United States is the United States government. So they actually fund, billions of dollars every year in small businesses. These grants don't just go to universities.
Right.
Now, so to answer your question, I'll have some product first to justify the grant, sort of, and then I'll write the grant, the R&D, and then I'll write in such a way to build the new part of the product. So maybe I'll have the first component of the product, so I can point to hey, I can actually do this, Mr. Grant Reviewer, or Mrs. Grant Reviewer, and then I'll propose the next R&D, because you need a certain amount of money to build products, especially when you're getting into hardware.
Of course.
So it's a way of bootstrapping, especially in these difficult times to raise capital.
That's amazing. I think that the audience would like it even more if you would go even into more specific detail, actually, about how you have received grants. Where do you go to find grants? How do you learn about how to apply to them? I know that the processes are very difficult sometimes, and it results in a need for an iterative response from a founder like you.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend. I mean, there can be negatives to it too.
Okay.
So it sounds like I got so much money to run this study. A lot of VCs look at this and be like, "This is a huge distraction."
Why?
Because you have to satisfy, and I had to run a clinical trial.
Right.
I had to put a lot of time and investment in. You're basically doing a contract for the government.
Right.
And you're audited and all this stuff. So it was just a lot of effort. you can do some product development off of it, but some VCs might see it as a distraction if there are certain types of VCs. I've heard it said by them before.
Right.
So that being said, also like it's very competitive. So I've gotten a couple, but I've also spun my wheels like at least 20 times.
Right.
You know, applied for something and didn't get it. But then again, once you get it, you can. I like literally hired my whole team on it,
Right.
and had a cap. A very nice cap table with the majority of ownership of the founders and stuff.
Right, right.
So if you can get one, it definitely has an advantage. But it's very nuanced how you do it. The government usually wants something that's sort of a breakthrough. Like
Right.
they don't want to fund something that's not going to turn the needle much in
Right.
terms of public health. So it has to be like just crazy enough, I would say, but then it also has to be scientifically justifiable. So there's sort of a line there where you want the crazy enough idea that can change medicine, but it also can't be hubbub. It has to be scientifically backed and all this stuff.
We think of government spending hypothetically as conservative most times. And so I'm actually interested in how, perhaps the crazier the idea, as long as it's feasible and you can back it up, the more likely you are to be funded. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, especially National Science Foundation, I mean, they fund crazy ideas. They don't want, if they want to give the money to companies that need the money, like this
Right,
idea wouldn't happen unless they're the ones that would step it up, because it's sometimes a little bit before VC. You haven't found the business model yet.
Right.
So it's like they're what they're told to do by the House of Representatives actually is to support companies that wouldn't exist without them.
And I think that that's like the process of innovation that like we should seek out actually as a country, right? If the government is not going to invest in someone, who is, right? And without the large amount of capital return that, a VC would of course seek, it kind of creates an opportunity for an amazing form of incentive in public health or something that is not just an immediate return on investment. So I think that that's pretty interesting. But a question that I would like to have in addition to the grants is how your personal reputation has related to all of this. Now, you have a TED Talk that has been viewed over 5 million times. This is that Dr. Dan Gartenberg from the Sleep TED Talk, one of the preeminent TED Talks on
blushing.
sleep. And we want to hear not only how that TED Talk impacted your ability to work on SleepSpace, but also just kind of how it has impacted you as a person.
Yeah, and I mean, that TED Talk came out when I was fundraising.
Okay.
And that basically really jump-started the fundraise. It made it a lot easier, I would say.
Right.
I think having the founder story is a really big thing, especially now. But, back then it was just totally legitimized me. But, I couldn't have done it without the grants, too. So that's another thing that the grants can do is sort of legitimize you as a scientist
Right.
to some degree. So, and also, the TED Talk legitimized me as well. And so it was just super helpful. I still get, users from it. I still get traction from it. So it was a great experience. I did something called TED Residency, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore.
Tell us about it, though.
So you should talk to the TED people, tell them to bring it back. But they got a group of people that give TED Talks together, like 20 people, and train them how to give the TED Talk.
Okay.
And they did 2 a year. And for whatever reason, mine, I think it's largely just because people are passionate about improving their own sleep.
Right.
It's just something that resonates with everyone sleeps.
Right.
It's like that book, Everyone Poops, but everyone sleeps. So everyone resonates with this. And so that's why it was actually the most popular TED Residency talk. And, again, this idea, and this is what I go on in the talk about, can we do things to enhance our sleep every night? And obviously, if you can, then your consciousness the next day is improved. I think the future of sleep is going to be I think we're going to sleep very differently in the next 10 years, but we can get into that later.
I think actually it's maybe a good time to get into that now.
Oh, okay.
If we can think about 3 ways that the world of sleep is going to change. Let's do one way within the next 10 years, one way within the next 20 years, and one way within the next 100 years.
Ooh.
What would it be?
Okay. Oh, I love this question. So, I think in the next 10 years, you're going to have the ideal sound, light, and temperature environment for each sleeper.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people are working on that. That's what I'm working on. There's other people working on this problem. I already have the lights and the sound. I'm doing the temp. I think that's 10 years, say.
Yes. Smart house, but for sleep.
Yeah. And Samsung's doing this too. There's big players doing this as well.
Amazing.
I was just talking to them actually. They're actually really big into the smart home thing.
That's great.
Anyway, then 20 years, you said?
Yes.
So 20 years, I think we're getting to the point of like a chip in the brain.
Okay.
You can definitely like zap the brain to enhance your consciousness. And then I also have these Inception patents. In sleep science, it's called targeted memory reactivation. You can Google this. It already has been validated. I'm not just making this stuff up. So basically, it's the idea that this is the basic idea. Say you're doing a task during the day, some cognitive assessment. We do declarative memory tests a lot as a cognitive psychologist is one of the batteries. While you're doing the task, every time you get the answer right for this like association that you're building, the smell of roses plays, say. Or for me, it's like a sound plays.
Okay.
You build a Pavlovian through Pavlovian conditioning, you build an
Yes.
association between the stimuli.
Yes.
Similar to like the Pavlovian dogs where you have the bell and they salivate and then you take the food away and they still salivate with the bell. So basically the same exact concept. We're just monkeys at the end of the day, or dogs. And we replay that sound that you associated with the right answer.
Right.
Or maybe it's like that perfect tennis swing.
Right.
And then we replay it when you're in a certain stage of sleep at just the right volume and intensity. That primes that set of neurons through spreading activation, and you do better on that task the next day.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy.
Okay. This actually sounds like this. Now, this is a follow-up question, slightly unrelated. It kind of sounds like the way you would maybe train artificial intelligence, because it's through repetition, memory.
I mean, we are artificial intelligence at the end of the day. Yes. I mean, we're, I guess, non-artificial intelligence at the end. But we work on, very similar things. And, my training was in building neural networks and stuff like this. So I'm pretty familiar with it. But, I see the brain as a computer interface that can be programmed. And we're basically being programmed right now by social media.
Yeah.
So I like the phrase, take back your brains. Mm-hmm. Right. So like we should be able to... I'm bogged down by so much stuff, and I'm addicted to scrolling through the thing too. I wish there was a way to sort of neural program what I wanted to remember from all the information that I got during the day.
Well, we're hoping that all of our viewers are going to want to remember this podcast and all of the other ones. This is an educational venture.
We're actually playing sounds in the background, and we're going to replay them while you're sleeping now.
Yes. Well, I guess a follow-up from that then is how is AI implemented into SleepSpace's current offerings? We did see that there is an AI sleep coach currently that's offered by SleepSpace. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the bulk of the hard part of the AI is the real-time sleep detection algorithm.
Okay.
So to build that, you need gold standard data, scored data from something called polysomnography, which is a montage of electrodes across the skull and the body. It has EEG, EOG, EMG, EKG, all the EGs. And they'll get all these signals, display them on a screen, and something called an RPGST, registered sleep technologist.
We love acronyms.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I should know it better. We'll read it, and every 30 seconds we'll say which stage of sleep they're in based on this montage of signals.
Okay.
That's basically the gold standard way that sleep is measured. Mm-hmm. And then that's our gold standard truth. And then we'll build algorithms on various wearables or nearables based on that data. We'll do a temporal convolutional neural network, basically, is what is the technical way of... I have a paper on it. That's how we do it, and that's like real hard AI. And then, this new stuff is basically you have that data. How do we make an agent that actually uses it? So we sort of have a dummy agent right now called Dr. Snooze.
Dr. Snooze.
Dr. Snooze AI that to some degree adjusts its feedback based on the data that comes in from our wearable analysis. The methods I think aren't that they just got their hands on crazy amounts of data,
right?
And they and that's how they figured out how to do it. But the essence of AI is very similar to what's been around for a while.
And so what I would think of, when I think of artificial intelligence and sleep is the ability to just give some actionable insights on your day-to-day, right? But you've already told us that it doesn't just give you insights, but it also affects, the surroundings and the sounds that you're hearing while you're also sleeping. I'm curious to think that, to take us back to a more imaginative future, if that Dr. Snooze was able to be put in your brain, perhaps, would it be playing noises within the brain, or would it just be a form of a chemical, kind of impact there?
So you're getting into year 100, which I think we glossed over.
And now we're back at it.
Yeah. So what happens in year 100? You have a horrible voice in your brain. That sounds no fun at all.
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, we currently adjust the sounds based on your sleep state. We mainly do it in two ways. We block out noise pollution because actually, like, your car, a siren going by and stuff like this actually disrupts sleep a lot. So we'll crank up the sound when we detect you're in a sleep state in order to more effectively block out the noises, and then play the delta wave and then wake you up gradually in a lighter stage of sleep with a smart alarm clock. But I think part of that, you're right, is, it could be a voice. I want it, the way I imagine it, and this is not in the year 100, this is in the year now. And that's not 100 years from now. This is now. You could make a mantra of your fully actualized self or something like this. Okay. I want to actually do this for myself at some point because I really think it could work. I don't know. I probably have some negative self-talk, honestly.
We all do. Of course we do.
So I think I could maybe use more confidence sometimes. And there's definitely a confident side to myself. So maybe if I form this mantra, really focus on it, play the sound, like I'm meditating on it,
right,
and then replay that when I'm in a light stage of sleep, I might be able to fully actualize better.
Okay.
I haven't given it my all of doing that experiment on myself, but I want to explore it more.
I'm fascinated by that concept. I mean, everybody says follow your dreams, right? I mean, and everybody says that to do something, you have to dream it first.
Yeah.
You're actually saying that there is science behind that.
And we could make it better.
We can make it better.
Follow your dreams better.
You spoke about the now. We're curious about the sleep product market and how the commercialization of it, from sleep pads, cooling pads, solar alarms. If you could speak about that for a second.
Yeah, I started out in software and I actually shifted to hardware/software. I mean, if you make hardware, you're always making software, sort of, usually.
Right.
But it's a crowded market, and that's why it's very hard. To be a venture-backed company, I think there's a couple of $10, $20 million wins, but to actually be a venture-scale company, I think you have to own something more tangible, like a device that's more of a platform for other people to use. So when I look at the successful ones, I mean, there's a couple good exits. Apple bought Beddit, as I mentioned before, for around $30 million.
Can you tell the audience what Beddit did?
Beddit was one of these sensors in the bed, similar to the Withings mat.
Okay.
But Apple bought it and then sort of did nothing with it, which is a common theme for some of this stuff. I mean, another reasonable exit was Basis got bought by Intel for $100 million in 2012 or something like this. But one pattern that I see is the reasonable exits, or the current $1 billion valuations, are Whoop, 8 Sleep. These are the companies that I think of that actually made it out.
Right.
Okay. They're all direct to consumer, kind of. Right. I mean, some of them do the B2B2C thing a little bit.
Right.
But all the medical ones, I use the digital therapeutics, which is what I originally tried to raise and successfully raised $2 million on. All the digital therapeutics failed horribly. So the first digital therapeutic for insomnia was this product called Somryst, which was owned by Pear Therapeutics. During COVID, this space went crazy. And at one point on a SPAC, they were valued at $1.6 billion.
Oh, the SPAC era.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I watched as it went from 1.6 down to $5 million. and then the digital therapy, and then they went bankrupt and got sold to and this company Knox, who's a PSG polysomnography company, for like $4 million.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, I think a lot of times even the successful, like, companies that I thought were successful are worth less than they've raised. So like one of the companies that I thought was like a darling in the space, Dream Health, had like a consumer EEG headset that you could wear, and Zio was the first one that did it. It's just all these. No one wants to wear a headset is sort of the main problem.
Been the problem with VR for years.
Yeah. And
Yep.
maybe Apple addressed that a little bit with their new thing. Have you tried it yet?
I have not tried it, but I think that there's an issue that they're expecting people to use it in their homes, and for that to happen, you would need to replace the desktop and everything that you're doing and within your normal day to day. And people have spent a lot of time aligning their house to be the way that they want it to be.
Yeah.
We're comfortable
Anyway,
using
that's a garden path, but
but we're comfortable using technology like on the go. And I'm curious to kind of get back to your point on social media, actually, and how that relates, because, we're using social media constantly. We're always on our phone. Jonathan Haidt recently released The Anxious Generation, and, we are having a lot of conversations around the effect of that on young people. I know that there are going to be a lot of college students that are going to listen to this podcast. And so I'd love for you to maybe opine on how the modern day-to-day life.
Yeah, and I think that's partly why I'm so passionate about this, is we're just infiltrated with so much information, and this device is an anxiety-producing machine. One of my mentors in this space at Penn State, Anne-Marie Chang, did some of the foundational research on showing that the blue light from the devices disrupts circadian rhythms and the production of melatonin. Basically, we have these photoreceptors in our eyes that are particularly sensitive to blue or white light. And so that's why at nighttime, I have and this does wonders for my newborn baby, and we've been...
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Oh, that's amazing.
My wife I highly recommend it for the baby, actually. There's a whole thing with sleep in babies, but...
Oh, that has to be a massive market that hasn't been solved.
Yeah, well, I mean, Nanit solved a lot of it, but yeah.
You're getting some great firsthand experience. That's the best R&D opportunity of all time.
I'm learning. I'm definitely learning.
Oh, you're paying
I woke up
attention.
and it's a little embarrassing, but I've been up since 3:30.
Oh, no.
So,
you don't look it at all. You don't look it at all.
Thank you. Yeah, we actually got him asleep through the night for the first. He's only 3 months, but
3 months.
yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But yeah, so the blue light from these, so we do red light at night because it's less, and also dim is a big thing too. You want it dim, as dim as possible. So like if I'm reading a book, you don't want to strain your eyes, obviously, but you want it like just at the level where you don't have to strain your eyes, would be optimal. So she showed that the blue light from the devices can dysregulate the release of melatonin and stuff like this, and has a peer-reviewed paper on it. Other people have argued that the phones, that the blue light isn't as bad. It's more the stress of the phone itself is like an object that we associate with a lot of anxiety. So just like having the phone in the environment even can have some kind of disrupt, or definitely like within arm length, or you can grab it. And now Ariana Huffington does this whole thing of like
not sleeping in the room that your phone is in.
Yeah, she has a cradle for the phone outside of the room.
Okay, that's maybe a little too much.
I use the phone as a sensor, so I don't necessarily want that. I think there's a happy medium here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I use the phone as a sensor and also a way of playing sounds and stuff like this. So I orient it away from you, out of sight, and then leverage it with my mechanism. I have a phone charger to play sounds and accurately track your sleep while putting your phone in its place at night. So to summarize, the phones are bad because they're objects that we associate with work and anxiety.
Right.
And on top of that, they produce this blue light at a time where you shouldn't be getting light at all.
So in that same ilk, though, it feels like you have experimented with all of these issues yourself. And I'm hearing that, you use your own phone to hear, the sounds that are coming out of, SleepSpace devices. You have the capability to track your own sleep through your phone. In what ways does it benefit the company for yourself as the visionary to be patient zero? We see what Bryan Johnson right now is doing in aging, right? Are you doing the same for yourself with sleep?
Yeah, I mean, I started originally with with N of 1 studies, patient 0. So I mean, I worked as the organizer for something called Quantified Self. I was the chapter leader in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And so this was like a group of people who started in Silicon Valley by the editors of Wired magazine, Gary Wolf and Kevin Kelly. They were just bringing together this community of self-trackers.
Okay.
And this actually brought together a lot of innovators in the space. Like Tim Ferriss was involved.
Oh, wow.
Dave Asprey was involved. I think there were some famous people in the original crew. And they sort of scaled out and then it's fizzled away. But I think there's a lot of power to the N of 1 studies. And maybe this is something in not 100 years, but maybe more like 10 years. I think we should all be constantly running little experiments on ourselves. So like, for example, I'm doing I've done lots of evaluations for different types of sleep improvement solutions. Like everyone has like a supplement or whatever. Like, does this actually work for you?
Right.
Like no one really knows. And maybe this supplement will work for one person and it won't work for someone else. So I think it takes a little effort, which is the hard part. But I think there could be ways of, like I met someone who tracked like every 5 minutes of his life before, put it in a database, and he could like query it. Like it gets like obsessive,
Yeah.
like some of these people. But I think with things becoming more passive, there might be ways to suss out to have people run experiments on themselves really easily, and it could almost spit out the fact of like when you have what it should do is be like, it seems like when you have a heavy meal at night, you sleep worse, or when you eat so-and-so food, you sleep worse. Let's try to, do an experiment to shift your meal time and see
Right.
if you consistently sleep better. So I'm like doing this for a supplement company right now, just as an example. Will this actually help you sleep? And you can sign up for the study and you can see for yourself if it actually helps you.
And it would be even more interesting if perhaps an AI-backed system that's looking into your habits could also think about the cultural elements of sleep. And, we think about siesta culture, right? We think about Italy, Spain, I'm sure there are many others. And the concept of, sleeping in the middle of the day to the point where businesses have actually closed down. And, you go on Main Street, you can't get what you're looking for. If
I
you're
love
a
that
tourist,
in Spain.
if you're a tourist, you're not getting the jamon. It's not happening in the middle of the day. So I'm just, curious on the kind of cultural analysis that comes in with sleep analysis.
Yeah, so the whole siesta thing is fascinating. I mean, just briefly on naps. Basically, the thing I'm a big fan of naps. We use Einstein famously and Edison famously used it to ideate and stuff like this. These little power naps during siesta time. One thing about naps, you should never take a nap if you have insomnia. That's it's actually the opposite of what you should do if you have problems falling asleep and staying asleep, and consult your doctor. But one of the big things that you try to do if you suffer from that problem is build up your homeostatic drive, or your main drive for sleep is how long you've been awake, which they call the homeostatic sleep drive. You want to build that up. So if you take a nap, then it's harder to fall asleep later.
Right.
That's why you're not supposed to take much longer than a 20-minute nap. That being said, if you don't have problems falling asleep and staying asleep, it's perfectly fine. And if you're super sleep deprived, maybe you should get a full cycle. So that's my spiel on naps.
Okay.
But to answer your question about the cultural thing,
Yes.
it's a fascinating question. Which culture sleeps the best? And I've
Do you have an
looked
answer to
this up a little bit. Yeah. Okay. First off, the Western lifestyle has resulted in us sleeping worse than we've ever slept before. So, since Gallup started tracking this stuff in the 50s, we're essentially sleeping a full hour less than we did in the 50s. And technology, and it's culminated now with the smartphone, but, it started with the light bulb, being able to stay up.
Wow.
It got exacerbated by the television.
Interesting.
Being able to be entertained whenever you want.
Right.
And then now with the phone, it's taken off on a whole nother level. So just to contextualize, essentially, we're sleeping worse because of our Western lifestyle. They've done some studies on like tribal cultures and stuff to see if they sleep significantly better than us. And they're sort of confounding things with like the fact that like they don't have air conditioning and it's like not as nice of a sleep environment. So that didn't really, there's not like some like primitive culture that they show like sleeps amazingly well. It's actually in that region, and also closer to the equator is usually a little bit better.
Okay.
If you go like on the extremes of the equator, things just get crazy thrown off because of, you know, sunlight is the biggest, has the biggest impact on the circadian rhythm. So sort of these lower like Eastern European, lower part of Europe countries,
right,
like Italy, you know, where also there is less of like a capitalistic edge to everything.
Certainly.
Like in the Slavic places, seems like those folks sleep pretty well.
Okay.
So how does this issue affect the now grinding entrepreneurial lifestyle? What are your takes on that? Some including stress.
As an entrepreneur yourself.
Yeah. I mean, you need resilience in this business, right? And sleep is sort of the linchpin, the foundation of having strong mental health and resilience, I would say. So I take my sleep really seriously. You know, even with a kid, I still try to get, you know, at least 7 hours a night, and I'll take a nap if he was up all night, I'll try to fit it in somewhere.
You're probably here during what would be nap time today.
Yeah, I came during my siesta time.
This is a couch show. Maybe after we leave.
Yeah, I'll take a nap here.
We'll turn off all these lights.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's been bad for your circadian rhythm. I apologize.
No, you guys have edged me up, or excited me up, so I'm
on track for a great night.
Yeah, but that's a big part about it too. Is we're indoor creatures now. You know, if especially in COVID, it went crazy.
Yep.
And people definitely slept worse because of COVID, combined with the anxiety of the whole thing. You know, anxiety is so related to sleep problems, and if you're more anxious, you get less deep sleep. It just messes with everything. So there's a lot of solutions around. So being more active during the day will actually help you sleep more at night. Getting 30 minutes of sunlight is a big thing right now in the biohacking community.
Yep.
So yeah.
You mentioned we're indoor creatures. During your TED Talk, you showcased a unique sound that had people thinking it's something about nature. Do you think people have evolved in a way where we've adapted to living in concrete jungles, or do you think we're still
we haven't evolved that quickly yet.
Genetically still, you know,
we're still cavemen. I mean, and another big thing is with the red light. You can some evolutionary biologists talk about red light isn't as bad because we were cavemen for so long when we went by the fire.
Right.
And so we're the red light is like the fire, and also the sunset is like a piece of it too.
Right.
So we haven't evolved to the concrete jungle, and that's part of the problem. And there's actually something in sleep science called social jet lag, which sort of speaks to this. It's like you have your own body's natural circadian rhythm, say, maybe I'm a night owl, but society has their own pressures and expectations of you, i.e. wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to school. And if you're a night owl, you brush up against that conflict. And I think there's sort of a global social jet lag when it comes to living in our society and our own dealing with technology and our own body's natural needs when it comes to sleep and health.
You know, when I hear that, I'm considering the concept of, college students these days. And I'm thinking about how all of the commitments that pop in to the day-to-day life, your social commitments, your homework, the startup you're working on, all of that combined is not something that the cavemen had to deal with at all. From a hunter-gatherer creature to where we are now. I mean, the fact that we are still even functioning in a way where we are trying to get sleep just like they did back then makes me feel like there might be an opening for a change in sleep culture generally.
Yeah, and we need to, if anything, we need to sleep more almost. I mean, it's more stressful, and this happened recently with something with my baby, and we were worried about like an illness or something. And in the past, it would have just been like, we can't figure this out. You know, we're not going to even try.
Right.
Let's not worry about it. It's just a weird baby thing. He'll grow out of it. But nowadays, it's like, I will Google every single possible thing for this. So, and obviously I did that. Like it's like your responsibility as a parent almost to know every piece of information. But the fact that you can know almost every piece of information, the problem is you can't really contextualize it that well unless you're like a medical doctor, for example.
Right.
But that's that's, you know, or the specialist or the ophthalmologist, you know, the specialist in the field. But that's like the essence of our problem. Like, we have all this information, we don't have a way to integrate it well into like ourselves to actualize who we want to be. So I see that as almost the problem of our generation. I think sleep has a major role to play in solving that, because it is the operating system for how we make sense of all the information in the world.
Wow. I want to repeat that. Sleep is the operating system for how we make sense of all the information in the world. Without sleep, there's nothing. I mean, it's true. We literally have to sleep. If you think of things that you have to do every day, it is drink water and sleep. And we are sleeping for way longer than we are drinking water. And what does an operating system do? You cannot function on your iPhone without an operating system. I feel like that quote has changed my entire perspective on sleep. That and the 1/3 quote from before.
Thank you.
I mean, wow. So clearly you're a visionary, right? I'm convinced.
Okay.
I'm convinced about the future of sleep. I'm going to try to sleep more. I hope that everyone else is trying to as well. But to bring it back to the point of how you have built your company, how do you distill your vision down to your team? My high school football coach used to always say that he wanted to make everybody on the team small versions of him. And he was massive, so we were never going to get as big as him from the gym. But he wanted us to be able to make the decisions that he wanted us to make every day. How do you do that when you're such a visionary on your team?
Yeah, honestly, it's probably something I need to work on.
Okay.
You know, I had a team at one point of about 8 people. I definitely had people had a couple people drink the Kool-Aid, and I love those people. But startup, you know, you need the 10Xer, especially when it's small.
Right.
You know, the 10X programmer is like
Yeah, no, very familiar with the idea. Yep.
So a lot of that is hiring. They're really hard to find. And to really find, it's almost impossible to find it at the seed stage, because you need the money. So, you know, I end up programming something, you know, or whatever. Like, so you end up like doing stuff yourself. The question is, I think a lot of it is hiring, right? I guess I would say, a huge thing. I mean, I don't think you can, if someone is like, you know, have, what's it called when they take multiple jobs?
Moonlighting?
Moonlighting,
Yeah.
or, you know, stuff like this. And there's little you can do. That's like a hiring problem. It's just hard, I would say. So I would, you know, one way that I know can work is, one of my best hires was my chief scientific officer, who did a lot of the algorithm stuff. I'd known him for 10 years, and he's my friend. You know? And I know he's reliable and has a part of his, you know, he has an analytical piece that I can't get to. So I guess knowing your limitations, I guess, picking people that fill the gaps. You know, I can give the spiel all day long, and like I'll try to like motivate the guy on my team who was overweight and, you know, clearly had maybe some sleep apnea issues and stuff like that. But I don't know.
Well, you mentioned earlier that there were ways and habits and solutions to help better sleep, from visuals to audio and touch, like cooling the bed. Can you explain a bit more about those for the viewers?
It's actually really fascinating, kind of more complicated than people think. So I've done a lot with the sound. So I already spoke to that. I've already spoke to the light. So we have red light at night, and you can set it to like doing a 30-minute. So we have a structured thing called a sleep journey. I should start there. So we have, they say you should start falling asleep at least an hour to 15 minutes before you actually start trying to fall asleep. So you should basically have a wind down where you're decompressing from the day. It's not, you know, it's sort of unrealistic to be like, I'm going to fall asleep right now, unless you're like super sleep deprived and it's really easy for you.
Right.
But typically it's good to have a wind down, and that window, that first 30 minutes, is a time where it's good for setting your goals, and unless it stresses you out or whatever, but that's a time where if you do your cognitive work or your relaxation work during that time, you're more likely to ingrain it later on in the night. Like there's a recency to like what you'll probably experience, like if you just watch a stressful movie before bed, it shows up in your dream or something like that. There's like a recency effect there to some degree. So if you control that wind down, It can help you not be so stressed, and then you'll have deeper sleep when you're not stressed. So we'll have like meditations that you can play, ocean waves. I'm a big fan of ocean waves. The deep sleep stim kind of sounds like ocean waves. Then it fades into a sound machine. And this is more when you're sleeping. And then we do a sunrise wake up with smart lights. We integrate with LifeX bulbs. So it'll emulate a sunrise in the morning. And it'll play bird sounds. That's sort of like the immersive sound light experience. Now with temperature, it's actually quite complicated. They have, the one that's done it the most successfully is 8 Sleep. The other main one is Chili Pad. There's also BedJet. Those are like the 3 temperature things. Okay. There's also Wrist One, Ember Wave. Anyway, that one's used for hot flashes, actually. Oh, okay. The whole science of temperature and sleep is kind of complicated. Right. There's the ambient room temperature, so like how cold it is in your bedroom. And usually it should be pretty cold. And remember, it's easier to get warmer than if if the room is too hot, right. It's really hard to get cold unless you have one of these beds that can get super cold. Yeah. But usually they recommend keep the ambient temperature around 64 to like 70 degrees-ish. Right. So it's very cold. And then there's actually the temperature in the bed, which is usually very hot.
Right, blankets, body heat.
Like if you were to measure the temperature within your bed, it's like 95 degrees, like in your cocoon or whatever. Right. Then there's the temperature of your limbs in proximity to your core. And there's good evidence, it's actually a little counterintuitive, because of the way that temperature dissipates throughout the body. If you cool your core, if you cool your head and your chest, basically, it's like distal versus something else, or proximate versus distal. If you cool your core, that helps you fall asleep, because when you reduce your body temperature, you fall asleep.
Right.
But also, if you increase the temperature of your limbs, that also helps you fall asleep. Because, so that's why there's this weird study. There's a whole line of research on this. I forget all the names. But basically wearing socks helps you fall asleep. Oh. Obviously, it has to be a certain cool. If it's too hot in the bedroom, it won't work that well because it'll be uncomfortable. Wow. So that's why it's a very complicated thing, basically.
Okay. So if we can, we're getting to the end of our time, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
And if we can boil everything that we just said down into a couple tips for people to improve their sleep. I know we've been talking about it the whole time, but let's try to boil it down into a couple easy ones that are applicable for anyone.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ones that are repeated all the time. Consistency is key, so going to bed at a similar time every night, but that also extends to exercise, eating, sunlight exposure. All these things are called Zeitgebers, which is a German word for timekeeper. And so you have all of these cues that control your actual internal biology. So the more consistent you are with those things, the more entrained your circadian rhythm is, and the healthier your sleep will be. Reducing stress any way you can. There's many ways of doing it. I like breathwork exercises, which we use in SleepSpace. We have like box breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. So getting the anxiety under control is key. Right. Reducing the blue light at night, and then optimizing light, sound, and temperature in your. This is why I love sleep. It's like when I got blackout blinds in my house, I did that one thing one time, and it had an impact on 1/3 of my life. So that's what I like to think about is, what's the one thing that you can do tonight, and it's going to be very specific to you, but maybe take a moment and think like, what are 1 or 2 things that I could change in my environment that'll have an everlasting impact on improving my sleep quality.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I appreciate you being able to distill everything down, because there's just so much knowledge out there. And I see you as someone, and your products, we're talking about your employees perhaps being a extension of you, but your products in a way are also an extension of you. And I would trust it. I would trust it. There's one final question that we have, and we like to ask this question to everyone, which is, if you could change one thing about your journey. Now, SleepSpace started in 2009, right? So this is a longer tail than most of the other companies we've heard. Yeah. We'd love to hear, if there's one thing that you could change, what would have it been?
What would I change?
Nothing is a good answer.
No, it's definitely not nothing. It's like I'm counting all of the things. I mean, finding the right the right co-founder, the right team. I mean, I think I did it to some degree, but I could have done it better at a couple of instances. I think that's, drives so much of the success of a startup. What else could I have done better?
Anything in hardware, perhaps a kind of decision to maybe just go into a certain area of research that ended up not panning out.
Yeah, I guess we totally over-engineered. Okay, yeah, we totally over-engineered the tech at first.
Okay.
And like we did the rough math on it, and it would like every user would have cost us more money than we would have possibly made, sort of.
Okay.
And it was just overly complicated. So I would say make a simple version that works, and possibly even find the customer first,
Right.
and then build it. I'm sort of doing that more now.
Customer first, product development is always, typically the best way to do it. But, when you have the background that you do, I don't blame you, for maybe overlooking that at first, because more than most of the people in the entire world do in this space. And, we want people we want people that know things to take chances, right?
Yeah.
So it's easier to just go out into the wild, learn from that experience, try again eventually. And, you're still doing it. You're going through it. And I know I've learned so much from you over the years too. It's not just now from,
Thank you.
Being with you a few years ago very frequently to now kind of, not seeing you as much, but keeping up with the company. It's been amazing to talk to you today. I will never look at Sleep the same ever again.
Good.
Is
Thank
there
you.
anything that you would like to plug on your way out? Anything?
Sure. I mean, you can get a free trial of our tech. Try it out. I like to give it away for free. And if it works for you, then you can pay me a little bit of money, keep the lights on.
Where can they find it?
So it's just SleepSpace.com, and it comes with a free trial. I could do a special 30-day free trial.
Amazing.
So actually, I'll do that when I get home. I'll make a special promo code. It'll just be sleepspace.com/Coeus.
Okay.
And that'll unlock it for 30 days.
Amazing.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
We appreciate that. I think our listeners will appreciate that. And we want everybody to have better sleep. Impacts 2/3 of your life, not just 1/3. Thank you.
Or 100%.
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Thank you very
Dan.
much.
Looking forward to Inception becoming reality one day. too. I'm glad you're in charge.
It's going to happen.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.